I would like to begin today's meeting by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we are gathered and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. I would also like to acknowledge any sorry business that might be felt in the community at this point in time. Welcome to the City Lifestyle Committee meeting of the 30th of October 2024. I declare this meeting open at 9/20/2022. I would like to advise attendees in the room that this meeting is being webcast and audio recorded. I note that Councillor Jeremiah remains a statutory leave of absence following the state elections. However, no leave of absence vote is required for this. Okay, so we'll begin with item 6.1. Okay, sorry. Yep. There is now a motion displayed on the screen to confirm the previous minutes, that the minutes of the City Lifestyle Committee meeting held on the 2nd of October 2024 be confirmed. Do I have a mover for the motion as displayed on the screen? Councillor Lane. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Murphy. Do any councillors wish to speak to the motion? I now open the floor to vote. All those in favour, please raise your hand. That motion is carried unanimously by everyone in the room. Thank you, councillors. Declarations of conflicts of interest. I now refer to declarations of conflicts of interest. Do any councillors wish to declare a conflict of interest today? Councillor Murphy?
Yes, I'm declaring a conflict of interest in 6.1 today, and it has been declared in previous council meetings.
Thank you, Councillor Murphy. Councillors recall that Councillor Murphy declared a declarable conflict of interest in relation to item 6.1 and elected not to participate in that matter. As such, Councillor Murphy will leave the meeting when this item is discussed today. I will now refer to the reports of today's agenda. We'll begin with report title 6.1. Councillor Murphy will now leave the room. So we'll begin with item 6.1, determination of Community Benefit Fund request, Queensland Fast Family and Communities of Australia. This is a public report. The presenting officers today is Eliza Dow and Chelsea Roberts. Would you like to present?
Through the Chair, today we bring you a report regarding a Community Benefit Fund application. The applicant is based outside of Logan, and as we've just seen, a councillor has also declared a conflict of interest. So following our community grant procedure, those two items mean that we need a decision on the outcome of this application to come through council, and that's why we're with you today, and that's what we're looking for. But I will hand over to Elise Dorr, Community Grants Coordinator, to give the details.
So through the Chair, as mentioned, a Community Benefit Fund application has been received for your determination today. It's from the Queensland Fast Family and Communities of Australia. So as detailed in this report, the organisation requested $1,500 in CBF funding towards their Samoa and Pacific Independence Day. That would be held at Bill Norris Oval in Beenleigh. So this has been a multi-councillor request, and you'll see in the report that 2 councillors and the Mayor indicated they would like to allocate. So Councillor Jackson indicated he'd like to provide $200, Councillor Fraser $500, and the Mayor wanted to ensure that the application was fully funded. So he approved up to $1,200. However, just to note that only an allocation of $800 is required to make up that shortfall. So the applicant is based outside of Logan, and Councillor Murphy has declared that conflict of interest. So now we hand over to you today for a determination on this request.
Councillors, do we have any questions? Councillor Wilcox?
Sorry, through the Chair. So the whole request was for $1,500. So is Councillor Murphy actually wanting to chip in any funding for it or not? Or is it just from Councillor Jackson, Fraser and the Mayor?
Through the Chair, as Councillor Murphy's declared a conflict of interest, the Local Government Act actually prevents her from indicating whether she would like to allocate or decline. yeah, so it's just only the Mayor, Councillor Jackson, Councillor Fraser have indicated they would like to allocate on this one.
Councillors, any further questions? There being none, there's a motion up on the board. We have a mover of Councillor Bannon. Do we have a seconder? Well, Councillor Lane. Can I see a show of hands in support? That has been carried by everyone in the room. Can we now ask that Councillor Murphy be brought back into the room? Okay, so we're now moving on to item 6.2, update on the planned embellishment of recreational park located at 40 to 46 Murray Road, Tanamara, Murray's Reserve. Our presenting manager is Mr. Brent Dowden.
Good morning, councillors and Mayor. Thanks for having us. We're very glad to be here this morning, and what I'm going to introduce to you today is a report which talks about the journey that council has been on since about 1992, and this was to deliver a recreational park in this local area, which is Tanamira. In about 2013 and 14, the Parks Branch progressed a request from the then Divisional Councillor to provide a nature-based playground in Murray's Environmental Reserve. Shortly after that, it was discovered that there was significant vegetation on that site, which is the Gossia Colada. It was in a nature reserve, and there were some frustrations expressed by the community about the impact of a park in that area. So as a result of that, there was a work done to find an alternative site, and in 2018 a resolution from council was received to procure the site across the road, which is the site that we're discussing today, which is the number 40 to 46 Murray's Road in Tanamira. So after 2018, in 2021, we actually went and procured a new site, and works commenced on a design concept at that site. But then in 2022, early 22, late 2021, we had those floods, and the water, as you can see by the images in the report, completely inundated that site. It remained very, very wet pretty much since that time. But in 2023, the team delivered a design concept on elements that they thought they'd be able to deliver in that site. So there were some very low-lying areas, and there's a lot of work done to try and put some infrastructure on the sort of higher, drier areas in that park. However, not long after that, and it was in sometime in 2023 where the team had to go and put a fence around the site because it was a new site that was procured, and they couldn't put the fence in because it was so wet. I mean, there's star pickets where the water's this deep in the star picket, and it's stayed wet ever since. So since that time, the team's been working with the Divisional Councillor. We've been out on site many, many times. We've looked at various options to try and meet this demand. And we've landed at a position where we just don't think it's feasible for a number of reasons. When you go down there, we saw a snake. There's mosquitoes. The grass is very high. We've tried to clear the grass to see if we can, get that moisture to move away. But as you can tell in those images, it looks like reactive clay soil, very, very deep ruts, and we've not had rain in that area. Well, we have recently, but not at the time, and it just continues to stay wet. So we just think that it's not a good idea to build there. And that's the summary. So what we're looking for today is that we consider through the upcoming planning instruments to look at considering this through that process to hopefully identify an alternative site.
Okay, we have a question of Councillor Bradley.
Thank you, through the chair. I do recall all those past decisions, etc. I'm just curious because not too far away, like about 200 metres away, I would say, in Leslie Parade, there's a park that often goes under with rain events, and it's got playground equipment in there. I suppose it doesn't have the vegetation that the Murray's Road does, but is there, and I believe there were properties acquired, and I don't know what has happened to them since, but is that a possibility to look at embellishment of parks that are not too far away?
We'll look at all options, as part of that planning work. So the short answer is yes. As you know, a lot of our parks do flood, and they do have infrastructure. I think maybe not all Councillor Lane, but the flood levels, this is an area that's always flooded. We've known that for a long time. The flood modelling, the most recent flood modelling changes has made that flood risk even greater. And when you look on site, there's really, and I don't know how close it is, 200 metres away, we'd have to look at, the actual ins and the outs, which is part of our process now, is we've got a more robust system and process that we've put in place to assess this so that we don't make similar mistakes. So, yes, we're willing to look at that, but we haven't actually investigated any of those options at this point in time.
Councillor Wilcox.
Thank you. Through the chair. Thanks, Brent. My questions are, and you just said it, we've known this block's always flooded. If we've known this block is always flooded, why did a council resolution get brought back in 2020, and why did officers ask us to approve the purchase of the block off TMR?
Through the chair, that's a good question, Councillor Wilcox. What I can tell, looking back at some of the records, is council officers didn't understand the water holding capability. They knew that it floods, but they just weren't aware that it retains the water that it does. In conversations that I had with corporate property about, how do we miss this? What do we need to put in place that it doesn't happen again? This was identified as, a very, very rare outcome where we've missed that window. But again, through having our designers, so the checklist that we've got in place now is that the design team need to go through a number of things to make sure that the design intent for that land is able to be met through these different checks before we procure it.
Good to know moving forward that there's checks in place, checks and balances in place, because it is quite alarming that there was a lot of rain in 2020 and we would have known had someone had an excursion to pop out on site and seen that it actually retains, and then perhaps we wouldn't have spent $210,000 on the purchase. And I know that's a drop in the ocean sort of thing, it's not a huge amount. But now, what are we going to do with the block? Is there anything that we can do with the block? Can we create it into like a Boondall wetlands type scenario?
Through the chair, thank you. Another good question. We're looking at all alternatives. What's unclear at this point in time is, excuse me, there's some impacts from the Green Link that are still going to go through there, also the motorway widening. So we're actually not clear yet on, what the impact on that site's going to be. Some of the options we've looked at is veg offset sites, and, another alternative option is to actually sell that back to DTMR for the purpose of vegetation offsets. In terms of the environmental quality of that land, it's directly across the road from a nature reserve, so we could potentially keep it, but we want to identify alternative sites, and until some of those other bigger things that are going to impact that land become evident, we will explore that at a later point in time.
Thank you. And just one last final question, and Councillor Stemp might be able to answer this. Has Councillor Stemp put money into funding site development plans over this site to create what she would have hoped would have been a beautiful park, but now can't? So has she put money into anything for this?
Through the chair, the project has largely been funded by Division 10 Local Infrastructure Program.
Sorry, so one final one then. So I hope, because this is now coming back to us, that Councillor Stemp can't actually do anything in this. I'm hoping that she won't have to recreate the wheel with that funding being put into this, knowing pretty much full well that we can't put a park there because it retains water. So I'm hoping that if another site is found, that money could be transferred over to another site so that she doesn't have to basically double dip.
Through the chair, I think this isn't part of the recommendations for this report.
Councillor Lane, you had your hand up before. No, you're good? Okay, Councillor Benham.
Thank you, through the chair. Good report, black and white. It's pretty obvious. Can't use it. It's too wet. So to me, this is a no-brainer. I'm happy to move it whenever it's ready, Mr. Chair.
Councillor Stemp, I understand we have an suggested alternative recommendation. Did you want to speak to that?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Look, when the report come through, I spoke with the manager and I just asked whether we could get a bit more of a clear definition on item 2 in terms of, the fact that an alternative site be investigated for a local recreation park for consideration in the upcoming LGIP 2.0. And he was in support of that. So I just wanted to, I did send it through to councillors and hopefully we can, I'm happy for you to test the other one if you prefer, but that was approved by the manager.
Okay, councillors. So we have a motion up on the board, and I believe we've included the alternative motion. Okay, so we've just had a bit of a scuttlebutt. We're going to test the first motion, and if that one's failed, then we'll test the new motion that has been presented by Councillor Stemp. Councillor Bradley, you have a question?
I needed to ask a question because it would determine, I suppose, which way I'm going to go. The LGIP 2.0, is that already established?
Through the chair, no.
It's
No.
even draft form?
No, we have a body of work to undertake for the next LGIP, and we're at the very beginning of that
Thank you.
process.
Sorry, can I ask a question as well?
Councillor Wilcox, you have a question?
Can I find out how much has been spent and how much is unspent? What was the total amount?
Through the chair, Councillor Wilcox, the exact figure was in the order of about $530,000, and of that there was 200. The 210 came out as constrained, but that was the total budget. So that's the difference remains, which will be transferred back.
Sorry, so I'm confused. So has 210 been spent by Division 10 investigating this?
No, through the chair, the purchase price for the land was $210,000. There was embellishment funds largely through LIP. The exact number, I'm sorry, I don't have that with me. I think it's about $435,000 off the top of my head, and there was also further funds from asset renewal program.
Sorry, I still think it was a block we knew that flooded. Should never have been spent money. Like, that money should never have been LIP funded into it.
Councillor Wilcox, that's not what's being asked today. We'll keep back on track, okay? So we do have the original motion up on the board, and we're going to test this original motion first. Councillor Bradley?
Yeah, if this gets up, would the property still be considered for the 2.0 LGIP?
It wouldn't be considered as trunk infrastructure. It wouldn't be considered as a recreation park in LGIP 2.0. We'd look at it for other uses such as offset planting and the uses that Brent spoke about, but it wouldn't be considered in terms of meeting our desired standard of service.
Right.
In terms of land area, because it would no longer be considered a recreation park, which is a trunk park.
So I'm a bit confused by this. So you wouldn't normally recommend that property anyway? Wouldn't recommend?
In terms of So there is if we look at the planning sector that this local community falls into, there is when we're looking at parks planning for local parks, we consider how many hectares of land we have, and we look at an accessibility catchment.
Yeah.
And the local community in this, there's not a local park within that accessibility catchment, which I think this park was designed to meet.
Yeah.
If we consider that this park, through this recommendation, isn't suitable to be developed as a recreational park, we wouldn't consider that we would then remove that from these calculations. So we would look at the accessibility catchment, saying there is nothing there that serves that local recreation function. Not just because it floods, but just because the soil, local parks typically have kickabout spaces, as you know, Councillor Bradley, and they serve for picnics for community and for community to spend time in. The quality of the soil on this site and the low-lying nature is such that we can't mow it regularly. We have to have Trazipac. When we got it slashed, we had to have a mower on a set of tracks because the soil is so disrupted, and you can see the wheel ruts in there. So through that process, we thought that the recreation benefit from a proposed park in this location is just not provided, not just because it floods, but just because of all those ancillary uses that you get from a local park. Hosting birthday parties, kicking a football just would be very problematic. And so it's more than the flooding, it's the characteristics of the soil that's the issue here, and its water retention properties. So we would consider it in LGIP 2, we would look more broadly at that catchment. We would then, like we do with the planning from a planning perspective about what communities' needs are, and go through that cycle about where we can identify land, the cost, the benefits, etc. And we would come back to council with more information on that.
Because I have to be careful how I say this. There was another property in Division 1 that was discussed many a times, and very similar scenario, where it was looked at for possible LGIP 2.0. And there's a deficit in that area as well for parks. So, yeah, I'm just mindful of that. And I believe also in Division 2 there's a deficit there too.
Yeah.
Okay, councillors, are there any further questions? We'll move to the motion. This is the original motion that's up on the board. Do we have a mover for this motion? We have no mover for this motion, so this motion has been lost. We will put the alternative motion up on the board.
Can I test a change to the next one as well?
We'll test this one first, and if this one fails, then you can put an alternative one on. Okay, we have an alternative motion up on the board. We have a mover with Councillor Bannon. Do we have a seconder? We have a seconder with Councillor Stemp. Can we see a show of hands in support of this motion? That has been passed unanimously, except for Councillor Wilcox. Councillor Wilcox, how did you vote?
I'm against. I would have liked to have seen a change in point 3 that all spent and unspent local infrastructure program funding associated with this project was returned to Division 10. The officers knew that the park flooded. They should have known better than to ask for LIP funding to be sunk into this project.
Okay, so that motion has been passed. Councillors, does anyone have any questions or any general business for the Parks Manager? There being none, you're free to go. Okay, councillors, we're moving on to item 6.3, Aquatic Facility Operations Review. This is a public report, but it has confidential attachments. And we have Mr. Brad Page and Sean Kelly.
Excuse me. Thank you, Mr. Chair. You did my work for me. I was going to introduce or reintroduce Mr. Sean Kelly, our Program Leader for Leisure Centres. Sean's portfolio oversees the aquatic and leisure facilities, which is the subject of today's report.
Excuse me, Mr. Page. Mr.
Councillor
Chair,
Murphy?
could we go into confidential, please? I'm happy to move this into confidential so that we can talk about the whole report. I'm happy to move that if someone seconds it.
Okay, Councillor Murphy expressed that even though this is a public report with a confidential attachment, she would like to move into confidential. Do we have a seconder? We have a seconder with Councillor Jackson. Can I see a show of hands in support? That has been carried. No.
Mr.
Yep.
Chair.
Okay, so I'll just go around the room. We'll see how we vote. Councillor Raven, how do you vote? For. Councillor Lane?
If a councillor wants to ask confidential questions, for.
Councillor Russell?
I normally would agree with that, but I would have preferred to hear the public-facing element first, so against.
Councillor Jackson?
For.
Councillor Fraser? For. Councillor Bannon?
I'll abstain so I can give a reason, because it's exactly the same as Councillor Russell's.
Councillor Stamp?
For.
Councillor Wilcox?
For.
Councillor Murphy? And I am also against, because I would like to hear the public component of this. I think it would be important for the community. But that has been passed, so we'll go into confidential. Okay, councillors, I just advise that the video recording has been turned on again. And once again, for the viewers at home, we're reviewing 6.3 Aquatic Facility Operation Review. Now, I believe we had an introduction that was interrupted by Manager Mr. Brad Page. Mr. Brad Page, could you please continue the introduction that you started this report for?
Certainly. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Councillors, the report before you today is in response to a request from Council earlier this year to provide information relating to Council's aquatic and leisure facilities, specifically around entry fees, opening hours and operating seasons, as well as information around the management and operating models of those facilities. The report is presented as a public report with both public and confidential attachments. I do appreciate there's a significant amount of information contained in that report, so again appreciate councillors' time in reviewing that. Would normally be throwing to back to the confidential discussion, but happy to pass back to the Chair for any questions.
Okay, councillors, do we have any chairs now that we're in public? Mayor Raven.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just to be clear on this one, Brad, this came out of the discussion around $2 pools and trying to understand if we could even handle the capacity for that and doing a full city review. I was very keen to understand if we could improve the way that we operate our pools, because I see other cities doing a great job, and I know the previous mayor was very keen to see our pool entry fees decrease. Will this mean that we'll be in a position to offer more competitive pool entry fees and lane hire and all that sort of thing?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through the Chair, ultimately the decision around pricing falls to Council. You'll note that the scale of the document is pretty substantial. So certainly the process of going through quite a substantial, robust methodology to provide that information back to Council to make the informed decision would be the preferred approach. But ultimately the positioning of the pools, positioning of how we operate our pools is contained in the entirety of the report. So I think there's significant information there to make an informed decision.
The recommendation that you've got in the report would give us more flexibility to have affordable and competitive pool pricing?
Yes, I think it would.
Excellent. And we're able to maintain quality control through that method?
Yes, certainly maintain, I would probably argue improve the oversight and the quality control at our aquatic facilities.
And it would still maintain sort of uniformity of like consistent pricing across the city based on the size of the pool or the aquatic centre?
Yes, and happy to talk to that because it is contained in the public component of that report that there is a proposal to provide an equitable and consistent approach to how we price pools across the region based on the facility size, scale and scope of what is at each facility.
Awesome. Keen to move it, mate. Sorry, Chair, mate.
Okay, but before we do that, we actually have a... Councillor Bradley, you have a question?
Through the Chair. I'm not sure if this is appropriate or not, so please tell me if it's not. Could you just disclose what happened in 2008 and how we've got to this position now and what was your involvement in that? Thanks.
Councillors, look, you're probably right. It's probably not an appropriate discussion for this particular meeting. There was a historical way that these pools were operated. Back in the day, I wouldn't have that full suite of information to comment on the record for that.
Okay, but before we move the motion that's displayed on the board, we actually have a confidential attachment for the PowerPoint that we need to table. Sorry, Councillor Jackson, you have a question as well.
Thank you. Thanks for all the work on this, Brad, and thanks for taking the time to meet with councillors to take us through it. Since there's no other questions, I'd like to take my little side quest. 7.5 under legal policy implications has a head of power, says provision of community recreational facilities such as aquatic facilities is a fundamental function of local government. Is there anything that you can point me to in my quest for core business? Is there a document or is it just tradition for our council, or can you help me out on any of that?
Look, thank you for the question. Through the Chair, would love to give you that beautifully crafted response. Ultimately, that's an enormous piece of work, and it applies to multiple facets across council of what is our core suite of delivery on this, and this. it's something that I think we're working on behind the scenes, and happy to come direct to you and sort of flesh that out a bit further. I think responded to you a bit earlier with the background as to that direction and the particular path that we may be going. But look, there is no one answer. That I can't point to a specific document and state government regulations, but certainly it's a reasonable question to ask. But it's a very, very complex answer to answer.
Thank you. Okay, councillors, with no further questions, we need to table the PowerPoint attachment. So we have a mover of Councillor Murphy. We have a seconder with... we don't need one. Okay, show of hands in support. That has been carried unanimously by everyone in the room. Now, I believe we have a mover of Councillor Raven for the motion up on the board. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Russell, can I have a show of hands of those in support? That has been carried by everyone in the room except for Councillor Bradley. How do you vote?
Thank you. I am going to abstain, and I'm going to give a reason for that. Last time this happened, it was absolutely disastrous.
Point of order. Have we ever done an external contract process before?
Thank you, Councillor Mayor Raven. I don't believe, not in this mechanism, no.
So we haven't done this before.
Okay,
so
I need to rule on the point of order.
So the information, the comment's inaccurate because we haven't done this before. That's what I was clarifying with the question.
Okay. Councillors, I'm going to uphold that point of order. Councillor Bradley, I'm going to ask you to retract that question.
May I change it to elaborate?
Of course.
That I'm going to abstain because last time the control was taken from council, it was disastrous.
Thank you, Councillor Bradley. Councillor Wilcox, did you abstain as well?
I'm going to go against and provide
Against.
a reason, please.
You can't. You can only provide a reason if you abstain.
Okay, I will abstain.
Okay,
And I'll find
Councillor
that ruling.
Wilcox.
I don't agree with one of the recommended AFOF entry fees moving forward, and I would have liked to have had these addressed here in this discussion, as this report has come back to council to review the council's aquatic facilities, including the setting of the pool entry fees. I hope that in budget we will discuss these further.
Okay. Okay, councillors, that has been carried. The motion has been passed. Does any councillors have any general business for the Venues and Events Manager? Councillor Bennon?
Thank you, through the chair. Great report. It's been a long time coming. I believe the mayor started this off. You're professional at what you do. I guess that's why you're on the Olympic Committee. So you know what you're doing. I love these reports because it's a professional talking about what their profession is about. And like I've said before, it's like getting a professional chef in and art telling them how to cook a steak. So I really appreciate your report. It was thorough. Everything was answered for me. So yeah, I was both here really good and well done by your team. So I hope the mayor's happy because he's the one that brought it up.
Thank you, Councillor Bennon. Always good to hear a bit of praise. Councillor Lane?
Thanks very much, Mr. Chair. Gents, the pool reopened on Monday morning and the Sky Branch had some great work done with the contractors. The actual group that run the facility were warmly greeting residents at 5:30 on Monday. I slept in. I was there 5:30 Tuesday and this morning. They love the facility. They love how fresh and bright and wonderful it looks. But they are keen to actually see an improvement in the change room facilities. And I know that we had a conversation around this. One shower per room is probably not enough for a swimming facility. So if we're able to look at improving that in the future and looking at future enhancements to that facility, it would be greatly appreciated. So the feedback is the residents are loving it. They really enjoy the really bright vibe that's happening down at that Gould Adams Park aquatic pool. And I just want to say thanks to you guys for pushing it as well. And I'm really looking forward to seeing those whiteboards with the temperatures on.
Thank you, Councillor Lane. And in reality, a lot of that credit sits to the right over there with the Sky team. So happy to take it. And I'll pass it on.
Thank you for the praise, Councillor Lane. Councillor Bradley.
Yeah, thank you. Through the chair, I'm unsure if this is directed to Brad or whether it's to the director, but I did speak to the CEO this morning when I was late coming in about the Olympic venue and obviously the change in state government and the possibility of that potentially being scrapped. So I'm not sure if there's a contingency plan of what to do from there, but yeah, just there it is.
I believe there's going to be a level of wait and see with the new state government coming in. Mayor Raven, did you have something you'd like to add?
There's a 100-day review being undertaken by the Christopher Woolley LNP government of the Olympic venues and training facilities and everything entailing that. As part of my role as mayor, I'll be engaging with the minister as soon as the minister is appointed. I believe that's happening on Friday, and I'll be overseas for the first week while they're first appointed. But I'm sure they'll need a little bit of time to get their feet under the desk. I'll be making a case for why Logan needs the LISC more than any other city needs that upgrade, because we've got such a deficit of indoor sports facilities already. Show why it's good value for money, and be making sure that the new state government knows exactly how important it is, not just for our city, but for the region.
There being no further questions or general business for the Venues and Events Manager, Mr. Brad Page, Mr. Sean Kelly, you're free to leave. Okay, councillors, we're on to item 6.4. This is a confidential report regarding the Logan Metro Sports Park activation updates. We have our Sports and Community Infrastructure Manager, Mr. Ben O'Brien. Would you like to do an introduction to your report?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good morning, Mr. Mayor, and good morning, councillors.
Sorry, we just have a bit of process that I've missed, Mr. Ben O'Brien, my mistake. I note that item 6.3 is a confidential report. A proposed resolution to move this matter is displayed on the screen. Do any councillors wish to move this into closed session for this item? Councillor Bradley has moved. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Wilcox has second. Can I see a show of hands in support? That has been carried unanimously by everyone in the room except for Councillor Lane, and it has also been moved by Councillor Bennett, who's literally just walked into the room. You're probably not sure what you're voting on right now. Okay. Okay. With that being the case, we're going to move into confidential. Okay, so we're back into public discussion. There is a motion on the board. Now, this is the preferred motion of the officers. We have a mover with Councillor Bannon. Can I see a seconder? Councillor Fraser has seconded. Can I see a show of hands in support? That has been carried unanimously by everyone in the room, and that motion is passed. Councillor Bannon would like to share some words in regards to that.
Thank you through the chair and give me the opportunity. I just want to kudos to Councillor Fraser because the move from Browns Plains Bears from where they were to Metro, which has been so successful, the numbers are through the roof. They're going to be a powerhouse club. It was actually Councillor Fraser's idea in the first place. Now, I don't know if that's ever been mentioned, but it was definitely Councillor Fraser's idea to move them across with the help of staff. And I think it was his club at that stage. It's a big thing to put your club in another division. But he was selfless. It's improved the club massively, and I think he deserves credit for it.
Well done. Thanks for the praise for Councillor Fraser, Councillor Bannon. I don't think I'd ever let go of my club, but I can understand if you want to. They're like your children. If you want to see them grow, sometimes they need to move out of home. That being the case, does anyone have any general business for the Sports and Community Infrastructure Manager? Councillor Lane, I think you've run the draw on that.
You'll get your red back later. Okay, so I did it in the last thing with Brad Page. The difference to the community in the 3 days that the pool has been open is fantastic. They love the new venue. Can you say thanks very much to the team that handled the improvements? Again, we want extra showers if we can get them. So can we start working towards that as a budget issue? The pool is vibrant, it's alive and it's wonderful, and I just want to say thanks very much to you and the team.
Amazing praise, Councillor Lane. Councillor Bannon, would you like to respond to that, Mr. Ben O'Berry?
No, I just wanted to say, through the chair, thank you, Councillor Lane, for the comments, and I just wanted to also thank the community for their patience during the works. It was greatly appreciated. It's a great outcome for the community, but I appreciate it. It's a big hassle to shut something down during works, but it is greatly appreciated, their patience.
Amazing praise for the community. Councillor Bannon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Recently, we went through a rough little patch there where we had a community group put out some misinformation at the Caddies building in Jimboomba. So myself and Mayor Raven were deep in the middle of that, thanks to glorious Facebook. A lot of misinformation. We had a lot of help from the state member and the federal member, and the massive thing for my community. It's relied on, so it's a stalwart of that community. It was huge, and for that to be transitioned smoothly and to be effortlessly handled the way it did, and it was rocky. So just a massive shout out to your team, to Francis, to Mel, to Cynthia, Sean, and Chester. Like the way you've handled that, I haven't had a single complaint from the community, which is so rare. Like no one's complained. The mistruths that went out there, the way you handled them, the way you handled the handover of the building, the way you handled finding the right tenants to go into the building, like it's just amazing. So my community's wrapped. I'm pretty sure the mayor hasn't copped any more from it himself, but he'll talk on that. But tiny bit, he reckons. But I couldn't be wrapped. So you sort of work in the shadows a little bit, I guess. Like this fella's always in the forefront, but I know how much work you've done behind the scenes, and it's like it can just. It doesn't get recognised enough, so I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for helping my community.
Absolutely showering with praise today. Councillor Bradley.
Thank you, through the chair. I'll continue it. I want to thank you sincerely also for the misinformation that has been put out into my area. I won't elaborate on that. But I am very grateful to you and your team for the way that you've handled that.
Okay, so we might as well change general business to just praise, general praise. But does any council have any further general business that they would like for the Sports and Community Infrastructure Manager? There being none, Do we have any general business from the manager?
No, thank you, Mr. Chair.
No, and we don't have any late reports.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, my apologies. Just a heads up, coming next round, we'll have our quarterly update for all things sport and community infrastructure developments across the city. So I look forward to sharing with you updates on all that infrastructure development at the next committee meeting.
Looking forward to that. With there being no more general business, I believe that concludes the agenda for today. And I declare the City Lifestyle Committee meeting of the 30th of October 2024 concluded at 10:55.